So this is the last panel of the day. And then after that, we're going to go into round tables where we can all meet, get to know each other, talk about various different topics on the round tables. Open banking's one of them. Fraud, I'm sure, will be another. But we've got quite a big panel here. You can see we've just brought up another chair. And that's because it's the juiciest topic of the day, which we've left to the end. And that is preventing fraud in e-commerce. It's something that we all face. You know, every week there is some case where some big brand has been breached, or, you know, we all know about APP fraud and the impact that that's caused on many an individual consumer in the UK, and the impact on the industry as well. The cost of fraud is huge. So I'll invite my panel up. So please come and sit down, guys, because we've got the chairs now. We've rearranged the furniture. But what I thought would be nice to do is, because I don't want this to just be, this is a great panel, by the way, got some amazing industry experts, retailers on the panel. It's nearly all retailers, which is wonderful, because they're actually making it happen. But I want to hear from you. So before we go into introducing ourselves, would anyone be brave enough to sort of say what they would like us to talk about? So, you know, you're all sort of payments experts. We've got, you know, we know what we're going to talk about, but is there anything specific you'd like us to cover when we talk about fraud prevention? What's your name?
Steve Goodin from Gravy.
Gravy, hi, Steve. So,
I'd like to hear everyone's opinion on agentic commerce.
Agentic commerce. Well, I'm glad you said that, because we couldn't have a panel today without mentioning agentic commerce and AI. And if I had, I don't know, £1 for every time it was mentioned today, some charity would be very wealthy at the end of today. But we will definitely cover that. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Hi, what's your name?
My name is Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Nora, yeah.
Nora.
Yes.
Sorry.
I mean, my request may not be like specifically fraud. I'm going to be, just if it was possible to talk about like a friendly fraud, what happens post transactions, and how do you guys tackle it when it comes to like friendly fraud, chargebacks, disputes. I'm from Chargebacks 911, and I'll be like really interested to know how each of you, if we have time, tackle this issue.
Well, welcome from Chargebacks.
Thank
It's lovely
you.
to have you here today, Nora. And I think that term makes me laugh, because what fraud is friendly, but I know that that's what we call it. When my son has used Microsoft UEFA game, and then all of a sudden there's £100 on my card, and I'm wondering where it's coming from, and it's coming from my son who's bought some avatars or whatever he's done. So it happens all the time, and it's something that, you know, all of you on the panel, I'm sure, have to deal with. So thank you. Anything else from our audience? And please interject as we're, you know, speaking. If you've got anything to say, you know, please join us. Hi, what's your name and where do you come from?
Stephen from Airbnb.
Hello, Stephen.
Hi, lovely to see you. I'd love to, I know we're sort of preventing fraud, but also love to hear people's opinion on disputes and redisputes as well, and managing that process.
Disputes and redisputes. And you've got to then also meet the lady from Chargebacks 911 later. So there's a matchmaking already happening in the room. So, right, so let's do something. Let's just go along the line, introduce yourselves, tell us what your worst fears are when it comes to fraud. And then we can talk about, then once we've built up the pain, we can talk about how we solve it. So let's start with you, your name and company, what you do, and your biggest fears that you have to face on a daily basis.
Hello, I'm not Dave Grohl. I'm Matthew, I'm from Clark's, all the way from Glastonbury. So I'm the global payments lead, so everything that comes through our stores and our e-commerce sites flashes up in front of my screens. In terms of fraud issues, I think one of my biggest fears would be our protective layers failing, and us feeling the sting of when things like that get announced, not on the dark web, but through the usual Facebook and social media groups that tend to pick up on those kind of things.
Okay, very good. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Freya.
I'm Freya. I work for Adyen. I'm the head of performance optimization in EMEA, which means covering everything from full funnel conversion, optimizing payments, and then also preventing fraud. I'm working with a few of the merchants and people that are here. From a biggest fear in fraud, I guess probably not having the insight, or maybe not being able to predict or have a product that's able to help protect merchants against fraud would be probably quite a big fear. But luckily we're not there.
Hello.
Mic testing first. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gitika. I work at Transport for London. I manage online payments, fraud prevention, and Nora, for you, I manage chargebacks disputes. So I can talk about that. Biggest fear for me is to ensure or to see what's coming, how the fraudsters are working. So I wish I had the power to, proactively know what's coming next. Although we take all proactive measures to what we can in TFL, but there are still more visibility if we had. So yeah, that.
Super. Right.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Brant Hoffman. I'm going into my 6th year in, the payments and fraud space. I'm representing AdData. We're a large global email network. So we supply email activity metrics into large merchants, digital goods and services, banks, FIs, etc. I think what scares me most about fraud today is myself becoming a victim. And so it's kind of, since I've been in this space, learning about tactics that fraudsters are using, what companies are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot going on, and so it's just becoming a victim is definitely part of the story right now.
And it's devastating. I have a friend who has lost £350,000 in a romance scam. Happened a few years ago and lost everything in her 70s. So, I know of a victim. We talk about it all the time, but actually that was a friend who had that issue. So it could happen to any of us.
Yeah, and I agree. Everybody knows somebody that's been a victim, and so, protecting yourself against it as best you can.
Yeah. Richard, hello.
Hi, Richard from Superdry. A couple of things, like fraud disappearing obviously would put us out of a job, so I don't want to eradicate it completely.
Good one.
And on a more personal level, I am the only person in the team that does fraud at Superdry. So my fear is prioritizing the wrong thing and then missing something else. So looking in one direction when something else is going on over there that actually is probably worse. So I have to constantly change what I'm doing, when and how. So.
Yes, I can't imagine how difficult that must be, those priorities. And last but not least.
Hi everyone, I'm Craig. I'm head of risk for Uber Payments UK. So as part of my role, I oversee all of the payments that run through the Uber network, so all of the Uber Eats orders and rides that we offer. I specifically make sure that all of our owners on the platform in the UK get paid in a timely manner, so any fraud that can impact that is a big red flag that we want to try and prevent as much as possible. We're also FCA regulated, so we have an e-money product and obviously provide the payment services for the owners. So there's a lot of risks and concerns that are on my plate. In terms of I can't remember the question, but what's keeping me up at night or the biggest concern, I think someone mentioned it, is what's coming down the line in terms of agentic AI fraud. That's definitely coming up in a lot of the governance conversations, and it's definitely on the horizon, and you may have seen that Uber has partnered with OpenAI. So this is definitely moving in that direction, so thinking about what that means for the business.
I think let's give the audience what they've asked us. So Andrew, any specific question around agentic fraud, or should we just cover it in general?
So Steve.
Sorry, Steve.
Sorry.
Steve.
Well, I had a conversation with my colleagues who are based in the US.
Yeah.
And obviously their risk appetite in the States is very different to the conversation over here. So it's kind of chalk and cheese. So it was really interesting for Craig to see the world of agentic commerce is moving at a rate of knots. I'd just be really interested to understand what those specific challenges. I know that you've partnered with OpenAI, which is obviously open news. But I'd love to hear the thoughts.
In general. So who would like to, is this in your thinking? Is this in your roadmap? Tell us what you're doing in your areas on this. Is there anyone specific?
I'm happy to kick off.
Thank you.
I think it's a really good question, Steve. I guess the way I'm looking at it at the moment is just making sure that we're getting the balance right. I think with Uber, it's all about being a frictionless service for the end user, and that shouldn't change. And we need to kind of embed that in everything that we do. So making sure that we're not implementing too much friction to prevent fraud, but getting that balance right, and then obviously coupling that up with any innovation in the fraud space and technology space, as well as regulatory space as well. So it's very much a balancing act to make sure that we're getting that right, and making sure that we have the right data and information to make those decisions fast is really key. But I think focusing on what does the horizon look like in terms of the fraud vectors when we're talking about agentic AI. And it's moving so fast, and it's still on the horizon, so we still need to work through what that looks like. But from my perspective, someone will be able to use their OpenAI chatbot, LLM tool, whatever it is, Gemini, whatever, to go and place an order, whether it's an Uber Eats order or an Uber ride to get from home to the airport. What we need to consider is, do we trust that AI agent? Who is that AI agent working on behalf of? Is it working on behalf of a fraud gang that's trying to, infiltrate the Uber network? So we need to have a think about authentication, things like SCA. How does that actually apply when we're talking about LLM tools operating on behalf of humans? But it's an interesting topic.
Yeah. Anybody else? Not particularly. No, that's fine. So the other question we had, it came in two directions. One was around friendly fraud from Nora over there, and then over on our left we also had disputes and redisputes, some questions on that. So perhaps tell us in your environments what you're doing in those areas. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I can pick that up.
Thank you.
So we have experienced issues of, I've not received my package, but I've got a picture of you receiving your package. So we have examples of that within our space, and when it comes to how we manage the chargebacks and fraud processing that, our disputes are actually tagged within our payment solution into fraud and non-fraud, so we can easily separate that out, and they're handled in much the same way from a customer end point of view. They require the same amount of attention to identify, but they are, we don't utilise any of the credentials on friendly fraud unless we start to see patterns of refund abuse, for example. When it comes to sort of reopening disputes and secondary chargebacks and that piece, again, that's all tagged within our payment solution. So we have that all monitored and labelled all within one place. So we have quite a streamlined approach.
Just from being a solution provider, I think it's a really key thing is that you do actually have that ability to be able to provide to merchants to be able to identify between the two, and then that can also feed into machine learning models. They can kind of pick up trends, things that we're seeing, insights, along with obviously some hybrid interaction. We're able to kind of look after it in that way and kind of prevent it as a solution provider as well for merchants. So it's interesting that it ties in with that.
There's a mix between pre and post-transaction morphing in certain ways together.
Yeah.
Or using the patterns from pre-transaction screening to inform less disputes.
Yeah, it's like a hybrid approach, I guess, is the way of looking at it. So it's being able to tag those two things together to create the best approach to do that.
So for me, I think it's identifying and understanding what friendly fraud means to you as a company. So for us, maybe a customer who's traveling from Liverpool Street to Abbey Wood in the morning and going back in the evening, and then disputing them or raising that as fraud, we know that it's a friendly fraud. Other example could be I've used a payment card for a friend topping up their Oyster card, and then suddenly I forgot. And these customers who are making these journeys on a regular basis and then disputing them and forgetting that they made the journeys. So clearly we have them under the friendly fraud category. Then we work on the prevention strategies. How do we prevent these? And how do we mark them on our systems to ensure that they're not coming back? So if they're coming as chargebacks, we definitely mark them and ensure that they're not coming back and making the similar transactions again. For us, I think one of the the strategy would be that if we have clear billing descriptors, what customers see on their bank statement when, as a billing descriptor, what are they reading? So make them as clear as possible. Your refund policy should be straightforward. Customers should be able to find online where the refunds can be or how they can process the refunds. Also your contact center, I think we should be able to advise them that, if they reach out to the contact center, we should equip our contact center with the information that when customers are reaching out to the contact center, it's a one-call stop rather than back and forth from this team, that team. So we have equipped over the years to our contact center. We've given them the tools, the education they've required, that if customer calls saying that my payment has failed or my payment hasn't gone through, they can quickly look into that and respond to the customer. So that avoids a lot of chargebacks. And then collaborating with your issuers and your acquirers. Give them the knowledge base of depending on the services you have. So for us, say for example, if we have recurring payments if we have recurring payments, we've spoken to our issuers, we've given them then this is what we have, so they know if customers come back for any of those issues, they can, instead of customers raising a chargeback, they can direct them, they can point them in the right direction.
Cool. Sounds like it's very, years of building that to make it slick the way it is. It's interesting to hear how you've done that.
So I got my start in the payment space at a chargeback company, chargeback.com. So I can fully resonate with the chargeback folks in the room. Coming from the solution provider side as well, and focusing more on data, of which I'm doing now, it's building up a powerful strategy for fighting chargebacks is adding in dynamic pieces of data. So is it the email address that's going to help in this case? Is it the phone number? Is it the picture that we have of them dropping something off? And then understanding what has to go back in to make that representation, okay, are we going to win this or not? And I also think that, from a chargeback perspective, if you can catch it early on, so just, hey, are we going to accept the fact that we're having a chargeback, or are we going to try to dispute this? So tracking those types of rates is highly important as you build out a chargeback strategy.
Cool. Anything to add at the end?
So I wanted to touch on the friendly fraud. It's first-party fraud. From my perspective, a bit like Clark's, the typical claims that I didn't receive my parcel, it wasn't inside the parcel, blah, blah, blah. Since COVID, obviously, photographic deliveries, more so in the UK, are more prevalent, which is definitely helpful. Collaboration, I've found, has been really useful. There are some solution providers out there that allow you to upload your claims data, which I do, and they upload their claims data, and you can access the database to see if they do it with other retailers. That's a really helpful way of determining whether the person trying to make the claim is real. In terms of chargebacks, typically they tend to side with the customer, the card issuers, if it's a chargeback. My biggest issue is Klarna. I don't know if anyone else has struggles with Klarna in the dispute process
Does anyone else
that they have.
Out there? No?
It's too easy for people to open a dispute for whatever reason. Typically, I didn't get it or whatever. And trying to defend it as a merchant it's hard work. It's resource intensive if you don't have a solution. I am, I keep referring to myself because I am the one that does all of it. So I'll speak to the customer in the first place. I'll decline the claim. They'll put in a chargeback. I will defend the chargeback. It will come back again and again. Sometimes that's 6 or 7 points of contact for the one customer. And it, you know, I'm like a dog with a bone. Even if it's for a £20 T-shirt, I'll still do it because I don't want them to get one over on me.
Yeah.
So like, it's personal. I take it personally if they absolutely do it. It is a principle thing because I know you.
Once they've done it with you, they can
And that
go
is
off and
exactly.
do it.
I see it time and time again. You know,
Yes.
this week, someone did it on one account. They set up a new account, and it was linked by the postcode to the address. But they changed their name slightly. They changed the address slightly. They changed the email address slightly. But it was the same person, and they're trying to claim, well, it wasn't me. I was like, I know it was you. Right. So they do it all the time, and the dispute process is too easy. It's shouted by people like Martin Lewis, which is great. Everyone knows your consumer rights, what acts you have to follow. You know, you can type it into ChatGPT. You can get all the information, and you can put it in an email and say, I want my refund.
You know, they always say the customer's always right. Sometimes
It's a
in these
complete lie.
circumstances, that actually they're not, are
No,
they?
it's a complete lie.
And how about at Uber?
So I don't have too much more to add, but I think from an Uber perspective, like we utilize data a lot. We've got a lot of information. You know, we've got a lot of. It's a very sticky product. When the user's using it, they're using it for years, so we know, you know, what their habits are, where they live, all of that information. So it's very easy to spot if someone's gone out and they're coming home at 2 a.m. Don't remember. They're coming home from a nightclub or whatnot. And they look at their, you know, wallet or, you know, transaction history, and then they don't remember. But, you know, it's very obvious if they're getting an Uber from the club back to their home address that, you know, it was probably them.
Craig speaking from experience.
No. So yeah, utilising data as much as possible to try and weed out where there is, you know, friendly fraud is one of the key things that we leverage.
Anything back from the audience there on that? So anything you want to say, Nora, or yourself over there?
Whatever I want to say is going to be after the panel.
Okay.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. Well, then let's get into our conversation that we had together. So, you know, we were focusing on AI-driven risk assessment, digital ID verification, and biometric authentication are shaping fraud defences, particularly in certain sectors, transport, mobility, public sector. But so, you know, what are you guys doing in these areas? Who would like to take that one? Don't look at you. Okay.
I can definitely talk from a solution provider. So
Yeah,
in the way
please
that
do.
we're kind of, what we're doing from a fraud prevention piece, and obviously we're kind of leveraging a lot of AI, ML spoken about, all these things to optimize. What we look at is kind of all different types of models, what are the data points we can use, which I think Craig mentioned. How do we kind of leverage that to make sure that it's not friction that we're adding in, but it's just making sure that we're attacking the right thing from a fraud prevention strategy. So I think talking around that is that we need to make sure that we have, I kind of liken it to cruise control. I think it's gone from having very little AI and machine learning, and then we've now started to input this into like a hybrid method, and that's what's helping to prevent fraud. So we've now got to this part now. We have Waymo, I think, in America. You know, you have driverless cars. We're not quite there yet with everything that we're doing from a fraud prevention piece, but I think we're getting there slowly, and that's how we're able to kind of optimize. So there's different models that we can use. You know, even talking about policy abuse, refund abuse. That's something else that, you know, solution providers are looking at now as well, because it seems that the conversation around the room is switching to that also. But I think it's about that. I think AI and optimization in that respect is not going to be, you know, the silver bullet, but that's kind of what we're looking at from a solution provider is how can we fix that and how can we do it in the right way. But I don't know from a merchant perspective what it is that you're doing internally.
I can. So we use Adyen, and I have just implemented the machine learning in May of this year.
Please tell us, how's it going?
So I used your original product a couple of years ago, and it wasn't very good.
Fair?
So I turned it off. It didn't work how I wanted it to work. However, this time around, whatever you did and went away, it has been a massive, massive improvement. So we don't get a lot of fraud, but the level of fraud has dropped quite considerably. The authorization rate has gone up, and I haven't had to change any of the rules. I've kind of let it lie and see how it works on its own. I haven't done any rule changes or anything like that because I wanted to see how it worked.
Great.
Pre-peak, before I decided whether I needed to change anything. And that's kind of my first real experience of working with machine learning and AI in a fraud. I've spoken to lots of solution providers that are third parties. They are expensive. You are included in our fee, so it's free. So I have been really impressed so far with.
How do you find, sorry, I'm going to take over from the questions. How do you find, what was your initial experience from going from perhaps something that's like a legacy, like static rules, like super involved in, to something that now you're not being involved in, and you're kind of letting run and seeing good results?
As the only person, my rules were quite strict because I didn't want to miss anything.
Of course.
So I completely relaxed them, and I feel there are some transactions that come through that I was like, I would have probably stopped that with my rules, but it leverages against the ones that it does let through. Way more go through than perhaps I would have let through. So I feel a bit freer knowing that almost is working how I want it to work, so I can focus on the things that perhaps the friendly fraud, the claims and the side of things. That kind of ticks away in the background, and I check it every day to make sure that I haven't missed anything. If I need to change a rule, I still can, because you still allow rules to be created. So I get the best of both worlds.
Nice, thank you.
And Bron, in your company that you focus on email, so why is an email still a top identifier in identity resolution? And how can companies maximise good transactions and revenue?
I think so. One of the things that's resonated throughout today is the idea of identity and trying to understand, okay, what is the identity of who is making the transaction? Where is it kind of moving through the full cycle of when you acquire a client to the final transaction? Email plays a vital part in that, but not just the email, it's all of the behavioral aspects of what it can provide. The date that it was first seen, how many times has it been seen across, multiple sites or places that we see it within our network. There's not a merchant in the room that isn't likely consuming an email at some point in time, and it's usually the earliest point at when you're acquiring that email. So it still is the primary or one of the primary digital identity pieces that merchants can leverage and focus on to help build out that digital profile. Kind of what's going on at the earliest stage. Is it a good email? Is it a bad email? Could it be a risky domain? Could it be a tumbled email, which is the sequential change of an email? So that's kind of why it's still important. But there's also kind of a shift that we're seeing, at least when I'm talking to merchants, is it's always been kind of a black and white fraud. We're looking at bad signals. This is we want to catch fraud because it's bad. Well, now, as you're talking about agentic AI and making transactions faster, we also have to look at the positive side of these signals, right? So it's not just a negative. We're really trying to bring in what positive aspects of it look like. So yeah, if we see that the email is good, if we see that it matches the IP address that we have, if the name and the address match or correlate to that, the phone number comes back and matches to it. That's a lot of data elements that you can pull together, build a good profile, and then pass them through the authentication faster or quicker. And Papa John's was in the room as well. It's like, so okay, that's great. You've got a quality profile, somebody that is regularly ordering. How do you incentivize that individual? So all of these signals can also build out the positive side.
So we can use fraud prevention,
absolutely,
not just as a utility or as a prevention method, but also as a reward system and a growth and for growth as well, if we do it right, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the majority of the merchants that I'm talking to these days are all trying to figure out, okay, we want to protect it as much as possible, but we really need to also make this a revenue conversation as well. Fraud budgets are small. It's not, it's not something that people are throwing money at the prevention side of the house. But when you shift the conversation, and this is for all internal teams, if you shift the conversation to how do we generate revenue off of this, it can shift budgets, it can open up other doors in general. So
thank you, that was good. So, there's always that challenge, isn't there, of balancing fraud prevention with that smooth customer journey. How do you manage that at TfL? I'll ask that to all of our retailers on the panel.
So we have to make sure, as I was talking to Matthew before outside, that we are, I guess we have the monopoly at the moment. TfL, we are the only transit customer. If they have to travel, they will use transport services, TfL.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that when customers come online, we start rejecting those transactions. We still ensure that we're accepting as many transactions as possible, but then we have to manage the fraud at the right level. For us, customers, if they are rejected online, or if for any reason they can't make a transaction online, we know that our customers will go to the station, maybe top up their Oyster card and make that journey, or use their contactless or Apple Pay, Google Pay to use, to travel. So we're not concerned that we'll lose the customer, and therefore we are managing the acceptance and the fraud level to make sure that when customers come to us, they feel secure. They feel that, yes, when they come to TfL, their transactions are safe and they're seamless as well. So that's the goal. That's what we're trying to achieve when customers come online.
And at Uber, the other transportation throughout the globe and London as well?
Yeah, I think, like I was saying before, just making sure that we're balancing customer friction with the fraud risk that we are exposed to. An example that we're working through at the moment is the Uber Money product, where it's like an e-money product where you can use on the platform. At the moment, if you cash in a gift card, it goes into e-money. I'm sure most of you know how e-money works. But what we're looking at is, the fraud rates over time. The product's been live for a few years, and we can see, the fraud risk exposure that poses to the business, and it is quite low. So we're just looking at how we can balance the fraud controls that we've implemented with the regulatory requirements around SCA, and where we can apply certain exemptions to, make it a more frictionless experience. Where we can't, apply certain exemptions, and where we do need to trigger SCA, for instance, we're looking at, again, how can we make that a seamless user experience through, the way we SCA, whether it's biometrics or, something else we can do in the back end rather than forcing a password or whatnot. So just trying to make it an easy user experience is really key. And I think I just wanted to mention as well, I think one of the other topics we were talking about is also trying to answer the question for the customer or resolve the issue for the customer before they even get to chatting to customer service. So building that into the app. So if they have an issue, that we're able to resolve the issue, whether it's a refund or whatnot, before it even gets to customer support. Again, so it's more of a frictionless experience, and then we're not having to, queue up in customer support and, throw all the resources at it, and we don't have big backlogs. So, yeah, you've probably experienced in the Uber app, you can, request refunds and whatnot quite quickly, which is really critical for us.
I think in terms of balancing as well, fraud is not always bad. It's not going to go away. It's always going to be there. And if you were a store manager and you had a person stealing a bag of crisps from your store once a month, are you going to employ a doorman to stop everyone coming in?
Good point.
Mic drop.
I think that must be your key takeaway, you know, that sometimes you need a little bit of fraud to understand
It's
what's
understanding
happening.
what your
Yeah.
business appetite is. Where's your limit? Because there is it's going to happen.
You
It's
can
gonna
learn from, you know, what you
100%.
learn from it is more than anything else. Like I said, you know, when my son, you know, took my credit card and used it for anyway, but what he learnt from that is important. So, like, we've only got like 4.5 minutes left. So, why don't you give us your key takeaway for this audience? So, you know, what if you, so we've scared them all with the fear of fraud. You know, it sells. I'm in PR. Let me tell you, the minute anything happens in fraud, there's comments going out left, right, and centre. Everybody wants to talk about it and build it up. But, you know, there's also some key takeaways. So what would be your Adyen key takeaway to this audience? To alleviate some of this worry that we all have.
Yeah, I think maybe trust in some of your solution providers and what's coming out there. I think it might alleviate some of the pain. We don't need to be throwing people at the problem when we do have AI that's out there. And then the level, I think I've said hybrid about 10 times, but hybrid is just being able to work those two things together, I think would be a key takeaway, but just maybe trust a little bit more. We're moving more in that way. But yeah, I think it's just be like little and often. We'll get there.
For me, finding the right balance between the AI and your manual rules, and also the right balance between accepting and rejecting, and where your risk appetite is. So I think once you know that, you're do fine.
Brant?
Yeah, so I've been really pleased with all of the other panelists and trying to take a lot in and kind of conceptualize this. Some key takeaways that I think it would be important to focus on. There's a lot about optimization, a lot about marketing, a lot about loyalty, a lot about trust. And I think that what it does for the fraud side, the payment side, is it opens up for more collaboration across departments, and really trying to collaborate also internally. So we've got these fraud controls in place. It's helping conversions. It's helping lead to more rewards or exploring new products internally. So just more collaboration in general. And then final, you know, if you guys don't follow About Fraud, it's a community for fraud fighters, etc. But just continue to educate yourself and people around you about kind of the pitfalls of what's going on. So chargebacks are one thing, but then again, romance scams are something else. And so there's just a lot going on about that. So lots of education.
Absolutely. And Craig, I feel your pain. You're holding this up for Superdry.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. So you're Craig. You're Matthew. Put it down to the menopause.
No, my takeaway is that the customer isn't always right, and it's okay to say no. I probably do that more now.
Yeah.
I have way more confidence now in saying to a customer, no, you're not getting any money back, than I did a while ago. So, and you know what? When I go back and check some of those transactions, I can see that they've gone into store and they've just returned the item anyway because they didn't get the refund immediately, which is what they hope. They hope you just process the refund to get them to go away. So, a little bit more friction from that aspect actually is a good thing.
Cool. I never thought I'd hear people say that, but I agree. Finally.
So from my perspective, I'm a risk guy, head of risk, and it really resonates what Matthew was saying in terms of, you know, making sure that we get the appetite right. And I've had that challenge over the last couple of years, making sure that our board is on board with understanding, you know, we have a fraud risk exposure. We always will. We're a payments business. It's never going to be zero. So it's all about just making sure that we get the proportionate approach to how we mitigate fraud and trying to get the balance right to reduce customer friction.
I think that's an important point as well, is it's certainly something that the board needs to be fully aware of and understand.
Yep.
So that they, you know, then can support their teams and also communicate to their shareholders or whatever, you know, in these circumstances.
100%.
If I can add to that as well, similar position to Richard. Make it simple to manage it. Streamline your process. The more time that you invest in managing it, the less time you can spend on optimization.
Okay, with that, that's a lovely way to finish. And I'm 7 seconds. Oh my goodness, I think we've done our timekeeping well, haven't we? So I'd like to invite Georgina. Is it Georgina? Are we going into the round tables now, or is there another session?
No, we are, but I recommend everybody come and get a drink. And then
Right. So it's that time of wine o'clock. Go and get yourself something to drink, and then let's all have a proper chat. Thank you.